increase in their dividend. Shares higher by 1.8%. Target as well. Discount retailer with a $5 billion buyback plan, which will kick in after their current $5 billion program is done, which they expect in their next fiscal year. Target shares up 0.9%.
Microsoft, $40 billion or up to a $40 billion buyback plan. That is big.
And Microsoft is very, very close to putting in new record highs again, just about 24 basis points away.
Wow.
Yeah, of course, Microsoft above $1 trillion in market value, so at least that approach seems to be working out for them.
Yeah, that stock's up 39% this year. Whoa.
Pretty unbelievable.
And Target's up 63%.
What was that, Jason?
I was giving you like the nod, like, what's up with you? What are you looking at? What's your one thing, Masser?
What am I looking at?
You want to know what I'm looking at?
Yeah, please go ahead.
I can't get enough of this WeWork story. Another great story out today about Adam Neumann, sort of like trying to recalibrate, the company trying to recalibrate. They're rethinking this $500 million credit line that was part of it. It was almost like they said, oh, wait, you read that S1 that we put out with all these different things that we're doing?
We thought it was hidden.
Well, where was your planning, months ago? I mean, I just feel like all of these issues have to come out and play out so publicly. It's not the way you want to come to the market.
So here's one thing and we've been talking a lot about this in the newsroom. I think this is one of these cases where if you look back to Facebook, you look back to Google when it first went public, a lot of these things probably were baked in there. But at the time, it was cool. Like, it's fine. They're tech companies. And now people are like, oh, it's a tech company? I'm going to look even closer, and we'll see how it plays out for
time to grow up. I will say one thing that it's caught my attention, and this is, I think it was our most read story on the Bloomberg at one point, and it has to do with the global economy and economic growth. The OECD coming out with its latest outlook and says we see the global economy sliding toward its weakest growth in a decade. So here we are, our longest expansion certainly on record here in the United States, 10 years out and counting from the financial crisis. And I just kind of wonder where we are. Are we at a turning point? Or, as we heard from James Gorman from Morgan Stanley, Australia, man, their cycle has gone on for longer. Maybe ours could as well.
And this really is the name of the game. We've been talking about slowing global growth, and that is exactly what we are seeing. We heard the Fed discuss it yesterday.
FedEx talking about trade and the impact on...
Right. And with FedEx, it's difficult to know how much you can actually chalk up to FedEx issues as opposed to trade or slowing global growth, as we mentioned.
Right.
But that is what investors are trying to figure out at the current moment. And I will note, people keep talking about these record highs being so close. They're so close. But if you look at the breakdown from July 26th, that last time we hit a record high, to now, still the areas of the market that have really led us higher are real estate and utilities. So it shows that even though people are willing to stay in the equity market, there is a need for safety.
Yeah, that's a good point. Dave?
Hard to beat that. I mean, really, I'll tell you, you're not seeing highs in the S&P 500 relative to something else. That's what I'll be talking about next hour with my chart of the day.
Oh, Dave, I love it when you come in armed with the teas,
Yeah.
He's very good at that. All right, Dave Wills, you'll be back with us with your chart.
Isn't that what Tom King calls it?
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
I've learned how to be shameless over the years.
Speaking of shameless plugs, we love plugging Sarah and Mike Regan's podcast is called What Goes Up. You can find it at iTunes, SoundCloud, and at Bloomberg.com. You're talking to Liz Ann Saunders this week.
We are. It'll be a good one. A lot of oil, repo market. We'll get into all the fun stuff. And, of course,
quiet week, right?
Yeah, real quiet week.
Nothing to talk about here. All right, Sarah Ponzak, Dave Wilson, thank you both so much. Let's do the Bloomberg Markets bite of the day. It's one number that tells us a lot. Today's number, Carol, is $240 billion.
Yes, indeed. The alternative meat market poised to rise to $240 billion in the next 2 decades as new technologies gain ground and consumers change their diets. This is according to Jefferies. So faux meat, I just love saying that. Faux meat.
Incognito.
Can I have an order of faux meat, please? May make up 9% of the estimated $2.7 trillion global meat market by 2040. So almost 1/10, up from less than 1% now. And what's my favorite brand?
Incognito. Incognito. That's your thing. You got to do it. I am
like an SNL.
I know. I'm really interested to try. Dunkin' Donuts is rolling out the sausage, the fake meat sausage. Apparently, it's at a bunch of locations here in New York City. I'm going to try it next week and talk about it on the air.
I thought you were thinking about that KFC sandwich, right, with the donuts and there's fried chicken
the donuts
in the
and the chicken. No, that's your thing.
No, that is
I know. It's the opposite of your thing.
So not my thing. Yeah. All right, everyone. You are listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Lots to come, including our cover story on General Motors. It's
I got to catch up on the Fed, too. I was, not around this show yesterday.
I've been here.
I know.
Covering it second by second, minute by minute, all that good stuff.
All right, I'll catch up. Speaking of catching up, he's going to catch us up on everything going on in world national news. Bob Moon's here. Hey, Bob.
Jason, any attack on Iran by the U.S. or Saudi Arabia will spark an all-out war. That warning today from Tehran's top diplomat has raised the stakes as Washington and Riyadh weigh a response to the weekend strike against the kingdom's oil industry. Democrats are accusing the Trump administration of engaging in what amounts to a cover-up of President Trump making his own deal with a foreign leader. The Washington Post reports a Trump administration whistleblower complaint was blocked from reaching Congress. It allegedly involves Trump promising something to a foreign leader that left an intelligence official concerned enough to notify the Inspector General of the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. ABC News reports the Inspector General deemed the whistleblower's complaint of urgent concern. House Intelligence Committee Chair Adam Schiff told reporters this afternoon that the Justice Department has gone against protocol and blocked the information from the very representatives charged with overseeing the president.
The Director of National Intelligence has made the unprecedented decision not to share the complaint with Congress.
Democratic Senator Richard Blumenthal says it amounts to a Trump administration cover-up. Facebook chief executive Mark Zuckerberg is making the rounds on Capitol Hill as his company increasingly confronts demands to modify its business practices, Bloomberg's Irv Chapman reports.
Senator Mark Warner hosted a session with members of the Intelligence Committee. He said in a Bloomberg interview, privacy and the use of consumer data was only one of the issues discussed.
There were a lot of issues about the potentially corrosive role in advancing hate speech. If you actually had to put your real name next to some of these posts, there might be a diminishment.
And that is Bloomberg's Irv Chapman. Global News 24 hours a day, on air and at TikTok, on Twitter. I'm Bob Moon.
Getting into the room with the world's business leaders is only half the battle.
That is a wow moment.
You also need to know what to ask them.
How do you frame this in terms of the price action in crude right now?
Tom Keene, Jonathan Perro, and everyone else who's interesting.
He's given us great perspective on these banks.
Bloomberg Surveillance.
So you don't think they should, but you think they will?
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Hi, we're the Goo Goo Dolls. We're fortunate that our daughters have what they need to grow and learn. But that isn't the case for nearly 13 million kids in the U.S. that struggle with hunger.
Childhood hunger is a heartbreaking reality that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and provides it to families and children in need.
You can help kids in need in your community by visiting feedingamerica.org.
To you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
Hope you enjoyed your meal. And I just want to say, he's lucky to have a brother like you.
Lucky? Caring for my brother is far from easy. But he's a part of me, like my arms and legs, so I'll be his. No time for tired. Nothing can disable this love. He needs me, but I'm the lucky one, even though I need help now and then.
If you're caring for a loved one, visit aarp.org/caregiving for care guides and community. Support for your strength. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
What if you could keep the top economic experts in a conference room next to your office without having to feed them?
Do we need better optics? Do we need some substance? Do CEOs care about ESG?
We have seen quite a lot of stimulus pumped into the system already.
It's the biggest warning yet about the financial risks of climate change.
Now there are more ways to hear us. Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and at BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Some people believe every day should start with a clean slate. We believe in loading up your slate with all the business information we can find.
U.S. trade officials head to China for their face-to-face talk.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
The stage has been set for the Justice Department to approve the merger of mobile phone carriers.
With Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
Does this antitrust probe have broader implications?
Weekdays at 5 a.m. Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
To buy your home, you became a house hunting ace, learned about loans, scoured neighborhoods, and asked the right questions. Now you're queen of your castle. If you manage that, you can get your retirement plan on track. Visiting aceyourretirement.org can help. With 401k tips and smart saving strategies, you'll feel empowered to own your retirement like you own your home. Go to aceyourretirement.org. Because when it comes to clearing financial hurdles, you're an ace. Brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
This is the story of a very special woman. In a matter of seconds, she turned herself into a great mathematician or an entrepreneur. Her knowledge was limitless and still is. She could also make monsters disappear, especially those that lurked in the shadows under the bed. Once, this woman put back together a teenage girl's broken heart, which had been shattered in 1,000 pieces. Just by giving her a bear hug. She masqueraded as a regular person at work, but as a superhero at home. Everyone knows her as Gabriella. I still call her Mom.
Your hero needs you now, and AARP is here to help. Find the care guides you need to help, complete with tips and resources at aarp.org/caregiving. A public service announcement brought to you by AARP and the Ad Council.
Are you interested in a challenging and exciting career? One where you can be part of solving complex challenges across industries and geographies. Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Why has J.D. Power ranked Commonwealth Financial Network #1 in independent advisor satisfaction among financial investment firms for the 6th straight time? We think it comes down to one thing: you. Because it's your input and feedback that keeps us focused on what's most important to you and your clients and continually pushes us to be the best we can be. Maybe that's why we receive top marks in every category of the J.D. Power 2019 Advisor Satisfaction Survey. They named us #1 in client support, #1 in firm leadership, #1 in operational support, #1 in compensation, #1 in professional development support, and #1 in technology support. Ready to partner with the best? Call Commonwealth at 866-462-3638 or visit commonwealth.com and feel the power. Member FINRA SIPC, a registered investment advisor. For 2019 J.D. Power award information, visit jdpower.com/awards.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. We've got the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ holding on to their gains as investors evaluate conflicting signals about the outlook for a trade deal with China. The S&P up 7 now. That's a gain of 0.2%. The Dow up 26 points, up 0.1%. NASDAQ up 23, higher by 0.3%. 10 years up 5, 30 seconds, yield 1.77%. Gold up 0.4%. 1,500 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude rebounding today, up about 0.3%. 58.27 a barrel. Brent is at 64.47, up by 1.4%. Recapping, S&P up 6, a gain of 0.2%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
All right, Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week. Carol Master, Jason Kelly, right here on Bloomberg Radio.
All right, So, as Carol pointed out, I was not here yesterday while she was carrying the load of the show, skipping school to do some management stuff here at Bloomberg. We all got to pitch in various ways, but I do need to get a little bit smarter, even after listening to the podcast yesterday, about what happened with the Fed. So, no better team to do that than the gentleman we have in the studio now. Tendai Kapvizi is chief economist for Lending Tree. He's here in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker studio. And Vincent Signorella, our global macro strategist, also here with us in New York City. So, Tendai, welcome back. Want to chat with you first. What did you hear yesterday? No big surprises, certainly in the cut, it felt like. But what did you hear from the commentary, especially given everything that's going on in the world?
Yeah, I think the Fed is having a hard time trying to figure out how this trade stuff is going to play out, right? So when you look at what they were saying about the future, which I think is what everybody was kind of listening in for, they were very non-committal. And I think it's up in the air whether or not they're going to have another cut. I think it all depends on how the data comes in and what happens with the trade skirmish.
Yeah, it was kind of fascinating yesterday because of the week's news, Vince, between what happened in the energy markets and then the overnight markets and the repo market. I think, the whole focus in terms of the Federal Reserve was like, hey, do they really have a grasp on controlling interest rates?
Yeah, the traders are really not comfortable the way he held himself yesterday. I mean,
what did they say?
He completely ducked the question of whether this was a mid-cycle adjustment.
Yes.
And I personally, watching that, I was thinking of Back to School with Sam Kinison going, say it.
But he would not.
He would not say it.
Because you could see the stories then today or last night, like, okay, Powell says mid-season or whatever, right, or denies it or rejects it.
The big takeaway, and I don't think we're seeing this play out because I think a lot of people are still getting this a little sideways, is in speaking to a couple of fixed income guys who usually are smarter than the guys I used to work with, the FX traders.
See a lot.
In looking at this, the comment he made about organically growing the balance sheet totally went by the boards. He did not explain that correctly. Well, didn't explain it at all. And what it really is that as currency rises, as currency balances rise, the Fed needs to add to reserves to balance that out, just to keep the ebb and flow even.
Right.
And so people took that as, well, they're going to be buying an QE light when it's really just to balance the reserves in the system, very similar to the repo operation. So it's not an additional easing. And I think that's what the takeaway was yesterday. That's why that's why equities rallied off the lows. And I think over time he will explain that properly, and I think the markets are setting up for a disappointment.
Well, Tendai, come on in, on that in terms of his explanation, because this has really captured everyone's attention, what's happened with the overnight markets this week. I think we're all trying to understand, is this the financial crisis? Most people have said, no, that's not what's going on. But were you satisfied with what he had to say?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the way that I was thinking about it, it's definitely not the financial crisis, right? It sounded like they did a bad job of forecasting how these markets were going to behave. So, I guess at least this episode maybe suggests that they'll get better at forecasting how these markets are going to behave. And I think it also has to do with the size of the Fed's balance sheet, where they're trying to calibrate what's the right size of that balance sheet in order to have the market function well.
So just to follow up on that, I mean, they forecast, maybe they modeled wrong a little bit, but it would seem increasingly difficult to do that, especially just looking at what happened this week with disruptions in the oil market, some geopolitical concerns, even elections in Israel, which could, sort of alter the global economy. How much trickier does it feel like it is for the Fed right now to come up with all those, the correct forecast?
Yeah, I think if you look at these various measures of uncertainty, right, and all those uncertainty indices are kind of spiking up, I think forecasting or trying to figure out where the economy is going is getting more difficult for everybody. And you kind of saw that also in the way that Powell was speaking in the press conference, right? If we go back to around this time last year, he said something and got in trouble. Then he said something in December and got in trouble. He said stuff in January or February and got in trouble. So, even a baby learns to stop touching the hot stove. So now he's saying nothing.
Yeah, I do feel like he's had his hand slapped a little bit and he's being very careful. Vince, I'm just thinking, there you are on the macro squawk desk, talking with a lot of traders and stuff. We've gotten beyond the Fed, now what? What is everybody talking about?
Well, I think we go back. I mean, we saw the crazy headlines just in the last hour or so regarding different trade and what came across with Juncker in the interview with Sky News. And I think we inevitably get back to trade. You know, the Fed is a highlight for the moment, but I think all of the central bankers have made it pretty clear that fiscal policy is the new monetary policy. There's not a lot that they can really do.
They're all pretty low.
They're all pretty low, and I think Draghi probably said it best, is that we're here to make sure we don't get in the way of fiscal policy and growth.
So Tendai, but good luck with that in terms of fiscal policy, because we haven't seen it work before. What are you expecting from the Fed, though, for the rest of the year? I know our team, I think, is still looking for maybe two more rate cuts.
I think it depends on the data, right? So last week we had inflation is this. They've been hiding this inflation. I call it the fig leaf, right? That they're hiding behind. If you look at core CPI last week, we got a 10-year high in that measure. It's not the measure they prefer to use, but certainly other inflation measures I think would be trending upwards. We've gotten some activity from lower rates. If you look at housing numbers today and earlier this week, they cut rates because rate cuts work, but they work to a point, right? They have diminishing returns, and Europe is the best example of that. So. I think they might squeeze in another cut if the data doesn't strengthen, but if the data strengthens, it gets harder for them to cut.
And you got to have something to cut at some point, right? Tendai Capvisi is chief economist for Lending Tree. Vincent Signorella, global macro strategist. We got both a baby touching a stove, a fig leaf, and a Sam Kinison reference in. That's one of the best segments we've ever done. Exactly. The trifecta. I didn't even know it was the trifecta, but
and if you want to hear more of Vince's comments, go to SQUA on the Bloomberg. Coming up next, folks, we're going to talk energy, specifically nat gas. This is Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Market Minute. Stocks are pushing a little higher today, helped by monetary policy decisions and some upbeat comments about the trade talks. The Dow Jones Industrials are up 24 points, or 0.1% to 27,170. The Nasdaq is up 21. The S&P 500 is up 6. Shares of Darden Restaurants are down 4%. The parent of Olive Garden and Longhorn Steakhouse posted a bigger than expected profit for the latest quarter, but the increase in same-store sales missed estimates. The number of workers filing new claims for unemployment benefits ticked up by 2,000 to 208,000 last week. Initial filings are still at historically low levels, suggesting the job market is holding up. Mortgage interest rates moved higher this week. Freddie Mac reports the average rate on a 30-year fixed-rate home loan is 3.73%. For the 15-year fix, the average is 3.21%. Jeff Bellinger, Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, everyone. Al Roker here. As a guy with his own catchphrase, I appreciate that after 75 years, Smokey's only said,
"Only you can prevent wildfires."
But I'm filling in because there's a lot more to report. Like when it's dry or windy. Be careful burning yard waste, because wildfires can even start in your neck of the woods. Go to SmokeyBear.com to learn more about wildfire prevention. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions. The Bloomberg Business.
We could play epic music, or we could speak in an overdramatic tone, or even set off fireworks. But that's just not smarty. Instead, we let our offer do the talking. Right now, you can grab 25% off our unlimited data SIM. That's just $18.75 a month with no speed restrictions, no credit check, and no long contract to tie you in. Now that's smarty. Just search Smarty Mobile and switch today. It's easy. Offer available for a limited time only. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
The world's longest wedding dress was longer than the Grand National Racecourse. Think that's big? This Friday, the Euro Millions jackpot is a colossal £167 million. 167 million! Now that's big.
Euro Millions from the National Lottery. Amazing starts here. Estimated jackpot. Rules and procedures apply. Players must be 16 or over.
Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October. Brexit will bring changes that affect businesses in many ways, particularly if you buy from EU suppliers, sell to EU customers, provide services to EU clients, and receive customer data from other businesses in the EU. Businesses need to prepare. Find out how at gov.uk/Brexit. Get ready for Brexit on the 31st of October.
Jamie Theakston and Amanda Holden.
Hot breakfast.
Tom Hanks is our special guest.
You're either being punished or rewarded. I'll let you decide.
I did do a whole show of grease on my front lawn when I was a kid. We charged everyone 10p. We raised a fiver and I gave it to Bishop's Waltham Gymnastics Club towards a new crash mat.
Do they get the crash mat?
I mean, it took a couple more years, but yeah.
It does happen to normal people like you. You've won £20,000. Well done.
I love this game.
Hot breakfast
With Jamie Theakston and Amanda Holden. Weekdays from 6:30. Listen on your radio, global player, or smart speaker.
Play hard.
Do you remember?
Here at Tesco, we're still celebrating 100 years of great value, with even more great prices that take you back. Like our perfectly ripe Tesco Mango, from £1 to just 59p. All this week at Tesco.
Selected stores excludes Express, subject to availability. Offer ends 30th of September.
You don't just live in one room, so why should you Wi-Fi? With Sky Broadband's Wi-Fi guarantee, you'll get Wi-Fi in every room or money back. Perfect for food shopping in the bedroom, gaming in your PJs in the lounge, or streaming sci-fi movies in the kitchen. Get Sky's superfast broadband and Wi-Fi guarantee. £32 a month for 18 months with $19.95 setup. Click on the banner now.
Sky Fibre areas, Sky Kit required. Refund on boost component of subscription paid during current minimum term up to date of claim. Minimum 3 megabits per second or money back. Prices may change during minimum term. See sky.com/guarantee.
People say you get what you pay for. We disagree. The Peugeot 208 Signature, loaded with features from touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto to parking sensors and 16-inch alloys. At £199 a month with £199 initial rental, you really don't get what you pay for. You get a lot more. The Peugeot 208 Signature. All that's missing is your signature. Peugeot Motor Company PLC, a credit broker not a lender, will introduce you to PSA Finance UK Limited. Personal finance lease. 48 months at £199. 18 plus. Guarantee may be required. Terms, eligibility and return conditions apply. You will not own the car.
Fly with Cathay Pacific to over 70 destinations across Asia and Australia and move beyond the familiar. State-of-the-art cabins, world-class entertainment and award-winning service, making sure you arrive ready to make the most of whatever lies ahead. Whether it's the stunning coastlines of Sydney, the secluded waterfalls of Bali, or the baroque splendor of Manila. Book now at cathaypacific.com. Cathay Pacific. Move beyond.
Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Business Week.
Another very timely conversation coming up. I was doing a little masser there.
You really were.
I just mastered the masser.
So we're going to talk about the energy space, specifically with Ryan Kelly over at Hennessy Funds. He manages the Hennessy Gas Utility Fund. So we'll see what he has to say about what happened and what the outlook is.
You might say the student has become the masser. Anyway, going to go to Charlie Pellet. He's got an update on the trade. Hey, Charlie.
All right, well, let's begin in the energy sector. West Texas Intermediate crude just turning lower, down now by less than 1/10 But red on the screen, the slide continues, 58.08 for a barrel of West Texas Intermediate crude. Brent is up 1.1%, 64.32 a barrel. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ higher, little changed, up 5 right now on the S&P at 3,011, up 0.2%. The Dow up just about 9 points, up by less than 1/10%, and NASDAQ up 19. That's a gain of 0.2%. Your 10-year up 5/30 seconds with a yield of 1.77%. So investors continue to evaluate conflicting signals about the outlook for a trade deal with China. The dollar is sinking, treasuries gaining as investors process a slew of fresh monetary policy decisions. Stuart Kaiser is head of equity derivatives research at UBS Securities.
I think you have this overarching debate of, is this the U.S. Fed or is this the global Fed? Because the folks that don't want to cut more are saying we've got pretty good strength in the domestic economy, particularly on the labor side. The motivation to cut more is generally coming from trade and rest of world growth uncertainty.
First day out for Datadog, shares surging 41.9%, and Apple says it's moving up the release date of its iPad OS update and additional iPhone software features to September 24th from September 30th. Apple shares, they're down 0.8%. Recapping equities higher, little change right now with the S&P up 4. That's a gain of 0.1%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thank you so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
And we've got a great guest to do so. The Hennessy Gas Utility Fund up nearly 19% this year. Fund investing, I got to check this with our guests, I think at least 85% in companies that have natural gas operations. So let's get into it with Ryan Kelly back with us, Senior Vice President, Portfolio Manager at Hennessy Funds, $2 billion in assets under management, based in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, by the way, a favorite place of Jason Kelly's.
Yes. Nothing not to like about it.
Ryan's in our Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio. Welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
So I got to talk. You have been involved, though, in Hennessy's large cap financial, the Hennessy Gas Utility Funds. You've also worked in the small cap financial space. What do you like managing the most?
Actually, this fund, the Hennessy Gas Utility Fund. And
why?
Well, because it's done so well for so many years, and I don't just want to be, leave it at that. The performance has been very good. It's in a space that's been very dynamic for these many years as well. And so, one thing I always like to remind people is that the performance of the fund is not because of me or because of what we're picking. It's actually because of the industry.
And it's an index, doesn't it?
It's an index fund. So the index and the industry and the natural gas utility companies and all these companies around the United States that move natural gas around the country, they've been doing very well for many years. And so it's been fun to work on because there's a lot to talk about. People think utilities, boring, not a whole lot going on, but they do have the dividend component. They also have a interesting growth component with replacing these pipelines that's been going on for many years.
Mm-hmm. Well, they also have a component that is geoeconomic and geopolitical, which that dynamism, to use your term, we were reminded of this week with everything that went on with Aramco. How does something like that filter through to your holdings, and what do you do in a case like that?
So these most of these holdings, almost all these holdings, are on the distribution side. So the more natural gas that goes through their system, the more money they make, essentially. So,
but it doesn't matter really what the price is, potentially, right?
Absolutely.
Because they just got to move it around.
They just got to move it around. And so the price is passed along to the customer. Mm-hmm. You, as a residential customer, will have a bill, and it'll have what you pay for the natural gas, and then it'll have for delivery. So from our point of view and from these types of companies, a low and stable price over a long period of time is actually much better for them, for natural gas. And really, stability is the key. If you have a lot of ups and downs, it means that industry and businesses are going to really wonder which kind of energy source do I want to go with.
Right, it may hold back in terms of building out further pipeline infrastructure, correct? If we're not quite sure which way it's going to go.
Exactly, and that's in the United States, at least for about 10 years or more, natural gas has been taking share in the overall energy sector quite significantly. Number one, for producing electricity, which we've talked about a lot in the past, but also just other uses in industry or residential customers. We add a new household every minute here in the United States as far as natural gas goes. And, the use of natural gas has gone up 31% in the last 10 years, and coal has gone down 41%. So it's taking share, and that's how these companies are doing so well.
Well, and we have seen, I think, keep me honest here, a fair amount of investment in infrastructure in this country, especially in order to sort of keep up with, demand, but also this notion that the U.S. is moving closer and closer to becoming energy independent, full stop. I know that we've sort of crossed over that Rubicon, but we're still kind of in the middle ground, it feels like, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think if one thing we could do better is certain parts of the country need bigger pipelines to get natural gas into. And that's a difficult question. There are certain parts of the country that just don't want more natural gas.
How much, too, of the story and the thinking is about LNG? as well, and being able to then export it out, right? Because that's a big deal.
Yeah, right now, about 7% of production in the United States is exported through these export facilities that are usually on the Gulf Coast. There's one in Maryland, and they're shipped via tankers around the world. We're now the third largest as far as exports go around the world as a
for
country.
LNG?
For LNG, liquefied natural gas. We're supposedly expected to, within 5 years or so, surpass Australia and Qatar to be the largest in the world.
That's tremendous. It's all the fracking that's been going on.
It's the fracking, it's the horizontal drilling.
Yeah.
A big if there and a big what if and a big wonder, of course, has to do with the trade war with China.
Sure.
And China's supposed to be the biggest importer, and we're expected to be the biggest exporter. Well, it would be nice if those two could trade together.
Right. Yeah, that would be nice. That'd be nice for many people. I feel like hopefully we'll get some resolution there. You're not the only one hoping for that, for sure. Ryan Kelly, Senior Vice President, Portfolio Manager of Hennessy Funds, based down in Chapel Hill, North Carolina, here with us in New York City.
Coming up, we've got a story on the Bloomberg today by our own Thomas Black. He recently caught up with the UPS CEO, David Abney. We've talked with him, Jason and myself. We'll see whether his comments mirror what we got from FedEx earlier this week, who had warned with a reduced forecast. We'll get into that in just a moment.
First, let's get to Bob Moon. He's got world national headlines. Hey, Bob.
Justin, just what kind of deal is President Trump making behind the backs of Congress and the American public, and then allegedly trying to cover up? Congressional Democrats are calling for an investigation after a Washington Post report alleging that the Office of the Director on National Intelligence blocked a whistleblower complaint from reaching Congress. The Post reports the whistleblower at an unspecified intelligence agency raised concerns over promises made by President Trump in a phone conversation with a foreign leader. Whatever that might have been, Post reporter Shane Harris says it was apparently troubling and disturbing enough to make the official go and tell higher authorities so it could be investigated by the Director of National Intelligence.
That information should go from the DNI to Congress, and instead it took this kind of detour where Trump administration officials apparently weighed in and said to the DNI, no, you not have to tell Congress, you're not going to tell Congress about this.
Democrats say it amounts to a Trump administration cover-up. Canada's Prime Minister is moving to contain a growing furor after a yearbook photo surfaced of Justin Trudeau in brownface after a 2001 Arabian Nights costume party and two other similar incidents came to light.
I didn't consider it a racist action at the time, but now we know better, and this was something that was unacceptable, and yes, racist.
With his bid for re-election just a month away, the 47-year-old leader begged Canadians to forgive him, saying it was a dumb thing to do and that he's deeply sorry for it. Iranian Foreign Minister Mohammad Javad Zarif is warning that any U.S. or Saudi military strike on Iran will result in all-out war. This as the U.S. and United Nations investigate the weekend attack on Saudi oil installations. Global News 24 hours a day. I'm Bob Moon.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at storiesofinnovation.njit.edu.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
No. No. No.
What are you doing?
I don't like any of our preset radio stations. We need a new car.
With the Jaguar E-Pace at $299 a month on personal contract hire, you'll find a reason.
That's better. And it's a Jaguar.
Initial rental £3,588. 48-month term. Subject to status. 8,000 miles per annum. Excess mileage and return conditions apply. No ownership option. Ends 30th of September. Participating retailers only. Jaguar contract hire.
1 in 4 children believe potatoes grow on trees. 1 in 5 children believe fish fingers are made from chicken. And 1 in 8 adults believe the moon landings didn't happen. People believe all sorts of strange things. Some people believe that insurance companies try to avoid paying claims. But last year, Zurich paid 99% of insurance claims made by their UK customers. Zurich, an insurance company you can believe in. To find out more, visit zurich.co.uk/99.
We could play epic music, or we could speak in an overdramatic tone, or even set off fireworks. But that's just not smarty. Instead, we let our offer do the talking. Right now, you can grab 25% off our unlimited data SIM. That's just $18.75 a month with no speed restrictions, no credit check, and no long contract to tie you in. Now that's smarty. Just search Smarty Mobile and switch today. It's easy. Offer available for a limited time only. See smarty.co.uk for terms.
This one shouldn't take long. Of course, if it had a cover, I might not be bothered. Can't see what's under there. And then they'd have chained the back wheel. It would have taken me much longer, especially if the chain's off the ground. Makes it harder to cut. This one doesn't even have a lock on the front. So, in the time I've been talking to you, I've nicked it.
Over 9,000 scooters and motorbikes were stolen in London last year. Lock your bike, chain the rear wheel, and cover it to make it harder to steal. Lock, chain, cover. The Met Police.
Jamie Theakston and Amanda Holden.
Hard breakfast.
Tom Hanks is our special guest.
You're either being punished or rewarded. I'll let you decide.
I did do a whole show of grease on my front lawn when I was a kid. We charged everyone 10p. We raised a fiver and I gave it to Bishop's Waltham Gymnastics Club towards a new crash mat.
Do they get the crash mat?
I mean, it took a couple more years, but yeah.
It does happen to normal people like you. You've won £20,000. Well done.
I love this game.
Hard breakfast
with Jamie Theakston and Amanda Holden. Weekdays from 6:30. Listen on your radio, global player, or smart speaker.
Play halves.
Should we go halves?
I'll get this. Let me just get my card, which was in my pocket.
You can't control awkward first dates. But if you temporarily misplace your Visa debit card, you can freeze and unfreeze it on our mobile banking app. Feel in control every day. Lloyds Bank, by your side. You can only freeze some transaction types. T's and C's apply.
Get smart, get savvy, and get saving this month at Tesco Mobile with some of our best ever prices on the latest phones. Like the Samsung Galaxy S10 Plus, now only $34.49 a month. A huge saving of £144. It's just one of the ways we're celebrating 100 years of great value. Go in store or search Tesco Mobile. Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
Ends 29th of September. S10 Plus savings based on £4 per month. 36-month credit agreement, 24-month usage agreement. Subject to status. Phase. Policy applies. See tescomobile.com/terms.
You don't just live in one room, so why should you Wi-Fi? With Sky Broadband's Wi-Fi guarantee, you'll get Wi-Fi in every room or money back. Perfect for food shopping in the bedroom, gaming in your PJs in the lounge, or streaming sci-fi movies in the kitchen. Get Sky's super-fast broadband and Wi-Fi guarantee. £32 a month for 18 months with $19.95 setup. Click on the banner now.
Sky Fibre errors. Sky kit required. Refund on boost component of subscription paid during current minimum term up to date of claim. Minimum 3 megabits per second or money back. Prices may change during minimum term. See sky.com/guarantee.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and at TikTok on Twitter. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow just turning negative. S&P, NASDAQ holding on to gains. 3-point advance right now for the S&P, eking out an advance up 0.1% at 3,009, but the Dow now lower by 23 points, down 0.1%. NASDAQ up 12 well, that's a gain of 0.2%. Investors are evaluating conflicting signals about the outlook for a trade deal with China. 10 years up 6.30 seconds, yield 1.77%. Gold up 0.4%, 1,500 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude back on the plus side, up 0.1%, 58.18 a barrel. And Brent 64.38, up by 1.2%. I'm Charlie Pelleton. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie, thanks so much. You're listening to Bloomberg Business Week right here on Bloomberg Radio.
Companies well, UPS and FedEx, and they're all about bringing everything we need right to our doorstep and just delivering packages all around the world. Well, there's this Bloomberg story today by our Thomas Black, who recently caught up with the UPS CEO, David Abney. And I feel like, Jason, it's very timely considering what the news that we got from Federal Express this week, FedEx, with it coming out with its latest quarterly update and downgrading its outlook. So you do wonder, UPS versus FedEx, same situation or maybe something else? So let's bring in Tom Black. He's industrial logistics and aerospace reporter at Bloomberg News. He's on the phone from our bureau in Dallas, along with Jim Corridor, equity analyst at CFRA Research, on the phone from New York. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being with us. Tom, let's start with you. Tell us about your conversation with David Abney.
I talked to him at the end of August, and they feel they're on the right track. They had started this journey toward embracing e-commerce several years ago, and David Abney realized he had to make some pretty dramatic changes to bend the cost curve, as he says, to deliver these residential packages, which have less density than the commercial packages and therefore a little bit less profitable to deliver.
And so, Jim, come on in here, because as Carol said at the top, we do think about this as a market that is really dominated by these two players. Compare and contrast with us, given what we have from Tom today from UPS versus what we heard earlier in the week from FedEx.
Sure, yeah, like you said, they are two companies that are basically dominating the industry here in the U.S. Their business models are converging on each other. So FedEx has traditional roots in air express, much more business to business, and UPS has much more roots in ground and home and consumer. That's what's serving UPS well right now, and FedEx not so well. UPS is seeing slowing in Europe, slowing in B2B. They doubled down on their investments in Europe at exactly the wrong time, and UPS has been much more focused on e-commerce and fulfillment, and that's served them very well.
And I think before FedEx, Tom, came out with their updated outlook this week, that was a disappointment, where FedEx and UPS seem to be pretty much trading kind of in tandem.
A bit. You can clearly see the divergence, though, this year. The UPS has done pretty well. They had a really good peak season, one of their best peak seasons ever. And even though the first quarter was maybe a little disappointing, the second quarter looked really solid. So I think people are going to really focus on this third quarter to see if that momentum is still there in the right direction. Whereas FedEx, they've had a pretty tough time of it throughout this year. It wasn't a very good year for their fiscal year, which ends in May. It didn't finish up very strong, and they came out of the gate very weak.
And so what is sort of the next step for each of these? I mean, FedEx, Jim, seems to have these, sort of this drag from TNT. They have all the elements that we've been talking about. How do they sort of get it back, get back the mojo?
Yeah, sure. They are taking steps to combat the overall negative operating environment. They're lowering the capacity on the air fleet. They're selling planes and getting rid of planes. That's going to help save them costs. They fired Amazon as a customer, which is going to help their operating margins over time, and also gets rid of the worries that people have that FedEx is going to dilute Amazon's business when it was never a big part of their business to begin with. And they are looking to overall double down on e-commerce in the U.S. and get their growth there going as well.
I mean, bottom line, Tom, and Jim, I'll get your thoughts too, but Tom, let me start with you. I mean, when it comes to moving stuff around, it really is all about UPS and FedEx. I know that there are some smaller players too, but these are really, these are our choices, correct?
That's right. You can't forget Amazon. They are building out their delivery network. It's been surprising how much capital they have put into this, and it was thought that was a barrier to entry. We'd have this duopoly always, but Amazon is building out their network in a big way, and there is a possibility they'll start taking on third-party packages.
Well, and so Jim, you agree? Is that what you're expecting too out of Amazon?
Amazon has invested billions of dollars in infrastructure and sorting and handling and warehousing. They have not yet taken that big step in buying planes and trucks in a big way. I think that's a huge moat for FedEx and UPS, that Amazon is going to continue to do the sorting and handling and allow these other guys to do the rest.
And so on UPS specifically, Thomas, I want to go back to this idea of big investments that, Abney has put out there. And as you point out in your story, there was some skepticism about it. This is a business that is very CapEx heavy, I think. Again, keep me honest. It's very, dependent on an infrastructure that you have to spend a lot of money on. Are investors okay with that, especially at a time where the world is generally sort of nervous about companies spending a lot of money?
Well, we saw their stock take a big hit when they first announced the price tag behind this plan in 2018. But I think
$20 billion. That's amazing.
Over 3 years, right?
Yeah.
And it's up from the incremental part of their CapEx. But they had underinvested for about, really 15 years. If you look at the investment as a percentage of sales, it was quite low for many years. David Abney told me that part of that was because the technology to retrofit some of their sorting hubs wasn't small enough or fast enough at the time, so they held off on that on purpose, and now they're building out those automated hubs, either greenfield, new hubs, or they're retrofitting their old hubs. So that's where a lot of that money's being spent, and of course to buy new aircraft.
So Jim, if investors, who've been watching what's been going on with FedEx this week, looking at the names, listening to our conversation, FedEx versus UPS, you did lower your opinion on shares of FedEx this week to buy from strong buy, and your rating on UPS, forgive me, I can't remember what it is.
It is a strong buy.
It's a strong buy as well.
Right, we do prefer UPS.
You do prefer UPS. That's where you think investors should allocate new money.
Well, over the longer term, both companies are going to be fine. The e-commerce demand is there. FedEx mentioned yesterday that they see package volumes doubling to 100 million per day over the next 10 years. Both companies are going to benefit from pushing that through their infrastructure networks. But right now, UPS is in the sweet spot, much more exposed to e-commerce. They do generate more cash from operations and pay a higher dividend yield.
All right. Gentlemen, thank you so much. Tom Black, industrial logistics and aerospace reporter for Bloomberg. Great story out on the Bloomberg today, catching up with the CEO of UPS. Well-timed, given everything we heard from their chief rival earlier in the week. And Jim Corridor is equity analyst over at CFRA Research. He joined us on the phone from New York City, and as we just heard, he's got a buy downgraded on FedEx, largely based on what we heard this week, and a strong buy on UPS.
Likes them both, though, still long-term. UPS shares, by the way, down 1.5% in today's session, but still has had quite a run in 2019. That stock is up about 22% so far this year. FedEx is just up 0.5%, but keep in mind that on Wednesday we saw that stock tank 13%.